Uber and Lyft are out of ideas to make profit, and now you are the one who's going to pay. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur. Welcome to what's turning into quite a series with The Gig is Up. I don't know if I'm going to have to just discontinue this series and just go back to making occasional Uber and Lyft videos. I don't know. But the company is self-imploding again, and you know what? I saw this fight out years ago. I might as well finish it in between all of our other videos, which you can see on our channel. So make sure you check them out. But Vice shared this very interesting article called Uber and Lyft are out of ideas, jacking up prices in desperation for profit. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what I said was going to happen. I said it for years. People said, oh, you're a Debbie Downer. You're too depressing. Like, you're so angry. It's like, well, yeah, this topic made me angry. That's why I wanted to move away from it. I think I'm in a better position now, and as long as I balance it out, maybe I can continue to comment on it. But look, here it is in black and white. This is what's going on. I'm going to show you a couple more examples of how you're going to end up paying for this. And this is one of the reasons why I've always said I doubt Uber and Lyft really have a future, despite how long they've been around. So here's what Aaron Gordon wrote on the topic. A recent Wall Street Journal article about two once hyped tech companies reads almost like an entire investor class suddenly took on Econ 101 course. Two companies that went public with market capitalizations in the tens of billions of dollars despite never coming close to making money are jacking up prices and therefore cratering customer demand in a vain attempt to turn its service into one with huge markups to pay off a bloated corporate overhead structure, even though they offer services with several meaningful alternatives. Turns out that's a really, let's say, crummy business proposition. I am talking, of course, about Uber and Lyft. Fares are at record highs, according to the Wall Street Journal, which is itself reporting data from a third-party service. Uber and Lyft don't report such data. By the way, I think that's illegal, especially if you're an investor in companies, but that's an argument that's still being had in general. Ride-hailing is a very price-sensitive business because much of the time people have alternatives, either in the form of walking, biking, public transit, or their own private cars. So, as a result of the price hike, rides are tanking. Quote, the situation has analyst investors asking how big the ride-hailing market is and whether Uber and Lyft can operate without losing money, the Wall Street Journal notes. This is a question many of us have been asking for a very long time, including this guy. This guy's been asking this question for a very long time. Uber and Lyft have been a crude proposition all along. Subsidize unprofitable taxi rides with venture capital money, claw for market share, and eventually figure something out that will make such taxi rides profitable despite the huge corporate structure of well-paid executives and engineers, a thing traditional taxi companies are already razor-thin margins didn't have. At the time, it seemed as if both Uber and Lyft were banking this entire plan on autonomous vehicles panning out. Ha! Who was one of the guys who was saying that wasn't going to pan out? Me, this guy. That's a humble brag right there. Turns out, AV development was no more than a several billion-dollar money pit that got one person killed. Both companies sold off their AV development arms for a fraction of what they put into them, no closer to replacing human contractor drivers with robots. I was skeptical that would have actually saved the companies all that much money, since the current business model passes off nearly all the costs of actually running a taxi company onto drivers who pay for their own cars, fuel, and insurance, where AVs would have meant both companies would be paying for those things, but that's a moot point now. Actually, I talked about that. Like, when people were telling me, like, oh, the driverless cars are coming, I told them, no, they're probably not, because guess who pays for all the gas and the maintenance of the cars? We do. And does Uber and Lyft want to take on those costs? No, because that would make them a taxi company. I'll bet a futuristic taxi company, but a taxi company nonetheless. Let's continue. After the AV debacle, Uber and Lyft went back to the drawing board on how to make supply and demand lines on the old Econ 101 chart somehow meet at a price that makes them profitable. Uber made noises about becoming the Amazon of transportation, involving several disastrous sideshows, such as a brief foray into the electric bike share that amounted to little more than purchasing and then destroying thousands of bicycles. Lyft has made a more concerted but seemingly little more effective effort at diversifying to bike share while continuing to chip away at those pesky quarterly losses to little avail. Since their foundings in 2009 and 2012, Uber and Lyft have raised more than $30 billion in private funding, according to Crunchbase. Even with that pile of cash, neither company has ever posted a real and consistent profit. Only adjusted profits that exclude dozens of real expenses every company has, like taxes and interest payments. And that was when broader economic and labor conditions made it easier to make a profit on a taxi than it is now. The fundamental problem Uber and Lyft keep running into is that most people are not willing to pay the fares it would cost to run a profitable taxi service with the overhead Uber and Lyft require, to say nothing of paying drivers a decent wage. And alternatives, both companies are pegging their hopes to like shared rides are not new ideas, but recycled old ones that have proven even more costly, because it turns out if people in urban areas are price sensitive and willing to share a vehicle with strangers, they will take a bus. The end result is an algorithm that offers you a discount to ride in a car it expects to have multiple passengers, but more often than not is just another single occupant taxi ride and just another loss leader for companies struggling to come up with ideas that make money. There are two basic paths forward for these companies. One, which Uber is currently pursuing, is to become the app you use for the taxis you used to hail before Uber. Isn't that a little ironic? The other is a managed retreat to the urban-focused upper classes that could and would pay high prices for the extra convenience and luxury of black cars on demand. It won't revolutionize the transportation industry, and it won't serve any equity goals both companies have long given lip service to, but it is a sensible business with an obvious, if limited, market and profit potential. It is also an idea that has already existed, once run by a plucky startup that focused exclusively on black car services from experienced, fully licensed and insured drivers paid a living wage. You may have heard of it. It was called Uber. And one of the other things that could happen, by the way, is a company could buy them out, like Amazon or something, and use Uber for package deliveries, things like that. Maybe instead of like hiring their own drivers, if you are a licensed driver, you can basically use Uber as a platform where you can put your business on it, and then you can get clients. They would see who's available, what their prices are, and they would select someone. But yeah, all these things have come to a head, and they are just not profitable. Now, in the last part, I believe, we talked about how Uber was going to start cutting incentives, that they said it was a privilege to be working for them, and that they were going to be putting a hiring freeze on everything they did. Well, for the record, Lyft is joining Uber and cutting back on new hiring, and they will probably be laying people off too. But some people, of course, were asking, is the incentive cutback going to actually hurt Uber drivers? Now, I didn't have any information at the time, but I said, of course it's going to hurt Uber drivers. Uber screws the drivers in the best of times. You think they're not going to try to screw them during the worst of times? Well, here's what they're doing. They're ending their gas-related surcharge. Now, granted, this is only for deliveries. If you are doing rideshare, you will still get this surcharge. But really think about it. This is one of their cutbacks. They are basically trying to tell the customers that they no longer have to pay the surge price, thus alluding to the fact that the delivery is cheaper, even though they're actually raising the prices on delivery. And you're not getting that gas surcharge, even though gas really did not peter off the way that we were hoping it would. And look, I don't want to get into the whole gas situation. It's downright criminal to a certain extent, and I don't like it. I know that there's a war going on. I know that there's supply chain issues, but there's also a little bit of evidence that the gas companies might just be taking advantage of a bad situation, and that is not right. Nevertheless, the gas is eating into everyone's pockets, most of all drivers who are paid a pittance of a wage to begin with. And I'm sure Uber's thought process, and they'll tell you this in a nice little email. I don't get their emails anymore, but they're probably going to send an email saying that, you know, they're taking away the gas surcharge for deliveries because you aren't driving as much. Therefore, they don't want to charge the customers more. And if the customers are not being charged more, they will buy more food, and thus you will make more money. It's a playbook tactic that they have used over and over and over again, and they're going to be bringing it back. Just keep an eye out for it. But yeah, we're at that point where it really felt like Uber was going to crash and burn a few years ago, but I had miscalculated that, people still wanted to use the product. And my viewers, particularly with how many views my videos were getting, showed that a lot of people still wanted to do this. Now, with the lack of drivers and people getting out of this, videos like this are kind of pointless because, well, people don't want to drive for Uber anymore. Those that still are driving for Uber, look, I don't know what their circumstances are. I've learned my lesson about making wild claims about why people do what they do. But I will say this. If they are desperate and they are doing this out of desperation, they are hurting themselves more than they realize. And they might think in their desperation they are doing what they must for their family. But I have made many videos about how that desperation is really feeding off you. And yeah, lost my job fairly recently, got laid off, will not return to Uber for that reason. But I don't mind returning to talking about Uber once in a while, especially since it seems like the chickens have finally come home to roost. And I think everyone who's doing this are going to be looking for new jobs, whether they are an engineer at Uber, whether they run a blog about Uber, whether they drive for Uber, whether they make the occasional YouTube video. We're all going to have to find something new to talk about and to do. And it was just finally time. Did the pandemic kill the rideshare industry? No, I think just prices did. I think economics were always going to catch up to it. I think had the pandemic not happened, maybe they could have held on a few extra years because, they could continue shifting and changing focus and hiding how they're losing money, but they just can't do that anymore. And we finally hit to a point where it's like, look, the gas is now this much money. Drivers will not drive for that kind of money that you're getting paid when this is what gas costs. And passengers don't want to pay more. They will go back to public transportation or taxis if the price justifies it. Heck, I'm going to share one little story before we leave. I'll admit, I use Uber Eats and Grubhub sometimes, mainly because of my Amex cards. We have, $10 off coupons that we get once a month and things like that. And so I decided to use it today to get a pizza. And I used my $10 off, and I saved $10, but the thing about it is the $10 covered the tip, the delivery surcharges, and $1.50 of the pizza. And this same pizza, had I bought it from the pizza website, it was Papa John's for the record, it was their stuffed crust pepperoni pizza thing. The pizza's on sale on papajohns.com, where it's $22 in the app. And after paying Papa John's delivery fee and the tip for the driver, it would have cost $2 less than what I paid on Uber Eats with the $10 off coupon. And most people don't have that $10 off voucher because they don't have American Express or something like that. And here's the question that you now have to ask. What's the point of a middleman if the middleman does nothing but make the product more expensive? It's the same pizza, and the company themselves will deliver it if you order directly from them. And if you get the middleman, it's the same thing. It just costs more. Anyway, that's where we are going to end this one. I'd like to know your thoughts on all this. What do you think about, what Uber's doing, about this fee going away? Do you think Uber is truly a rat cornered and they have no way out? What do you think are some of the things that happen to Uber in the future, and Lyft for that matter? I'd love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.